René Descartes, who lived from 1596 to 1650, is frequently acknowledged as one of the early influencers of the Age of Enlightenment. In this video, we delve into his contributions to philosophy and why they justly earned him the title Father of Modern Philosophy. We'll explore how Descartes arrived at his renowned Cogito ergo sum and explore his work, The Discourse on the Method. And we'll explain his theory of Cartesian Dualism and discuss why it contributed to the development of our modern era. And make sure to watch the video until the end to discover why it might have been wiser for him to never visit Queen Christina of Sweden. René Descartes, with a mathematical background, was deeply fascinated by the unshakable certainty in this discipline. For instance, the certainty that 3 times 3 always equals 9, or the timeless equation a squared plus b squared equals c squared. These mathematical truths are unquestionable and universally valid. Regarding other fields of knowledge, Descartes longed for comparable levels of certainty. He observed that, at best, traditional philosophical claims seemed no more than probable, leaving them uncertain and subject to doubt. He realized that philosophy, despite receiving the attention of brilliant minds for centuries, remained a field characterized by ongoing debate and uncertainty. When he contemplated the wide array of opinions that could emerge on the same subject, he saw anything with even a hint of uncertainty as likely to be incorrect. Consequently, Descartes set out on a deep reformation of philosophical thought. His aim was to lay down the foundational universal principles of knowledge, principles whose truth and certainty would be as unquestionable as the mathematical fact that 3 times 3 equals 9. The goal, therefore, was to establish an initial foundation of certainty, a kind of Archimedean point for all knowledge. In his first major work, Discourse on the Method of Rightly Conducting One's Reason and of Seeking Truth in the Sciences, Descartes explains how he proceeded in his quest for truth. I ought to reject as absolutely false all opinions in regard to which I could suppose the least ground for doubt, in order to ascertain whether after that there remained aught in my belief that was wholly indubitable. This strategy is known as Cartesian Doubt. His intention is to treat everything as false for which even the slightest doubt is possible, with the hope that something will remain beyond the shadow of a doubt even under the best, or rather worst, intentions. His first target for doubt is our sensory perceptions. Seeing that our senses sometimes deceive us, I was willing to suppose that there existed nothing really such as they presented to us. Our senses are fallible and, therefore, cannot be the wellspring of knowledge that is beyond doubt. However, Descartes didn't stop at questioning the reliability of our senses. He also harbored suspicions about the trustworthiness of logic, which means that even our thoughts could be incorrect. And his doubts reached even more profound depths. I suppose that all the objects that had ever entered into my mind when awake had in them no more truth than the illusions of my dreams. Ultimately, Descartes found himself in a position where he doubted everything he had once taken for granted, including the very foundations of mathematics, which had appeared utterly secure. He portrays this phase in his thinking as very unsettling. It seemed that nothing we perceive through our senses or the thoughts we have could be deemed unquestionably true and certain. Yet, it is precisely in this most radical doubt that Descartes finds the firm foundation he seeks. He reassures himself, saying, "Even if I deceive myself in everything I think, these thoughts in which I deceive myself still exist. Everything I think may be false, but it remains true that I am thinking. And if it is true that I think, then it is also true that I am, because I can only think if I am." This is how Descartes arrives at his famous conclusion, "I think, therefore I am." Cogito ergo sum. In his own words, I, convinced that I was as open to error as any other, rejected as false all the reasonings I had hitherto taken for demonstrations. But immediately upon this I observed that, whilst I thus wished to think that all was false, it was absolutely necessary that I, who thus thought, should be somewhat. And as I observed that this truth, I think therefore I am, was so certain and of such evidence that no ground of doubt, however extravagant, could be alleged by the skeptics capable of shaking it. Descartes had thus identified the long-sought Archimedean point of all knowledge. It is the certainty that we think, and in the act of thinking, we exist. With this foundation of all knowledge in human reason, Descartes laid the groundwork for what is recognized as rationalism, which later developed into the dominant philosophical school of thought in the 17th century. Rationalism maintained that reason, or the capacity for logical thinking, served as our primary method for acquiring knowledge. It asserted that all knowledge about the world could be derived exclusively from the process of thought, contrasting other sources of knowledge like faith, tradition, or sensory experience. Besides Descartes, notable rationalists included Baruch Spinoza and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Descartes' Cogito ergo sum extended to a new philosophical worldview. For him, the certainty of human existence is no longer based on God, as it was in the Middle Ages, the belief that God created the world and us, but is now grounded in the individual and their thinking. During this time, individuals started to perceive themselves as self-reliant, no longer placing as much reliance on God, but rather on their own abilities. This marked the start of a trend towards secularization, which became more pronounced during the Enlightenment. This increasing self-assuredness of humanity, along with the diminishing importance of God, emerged as a defining feature of modern thought. It is for this very reason that Descartes' phrase became one of the most renowned in the history of philosophy. Descartes not only redefined the foundation of knowledge, but also its purpose. According to him, the goal of all scientific endeavors should be the improvement of human life. He envisioned us as masters and possessors of nature, with the ability to utilize nature for our benefit and consequently elevate our quality of life. This objective was a significant departure from the objectives of the medieval period. Back then, the emphasis was on using reason to provide rational justifications for the existence of God and other Christian doctrines. However, Descartes shifted the focus to prioritize the enhancement of human life in this world as the primary objective of all scientific efforts. This new purpose marked another profound change in perspective initiated by Descartes, shaping the thinking of the modern era. One of his significant theories, which was particularly consequential for the development of modern thought, was his understanding of the mind-body dualism. Please bear with us for this one, as it might be a bit complex to grasp, but it's crucial to understand, because Descartes' concept of dualism demystified nature, allowing scientific experiments free from ethical or religious constraints. This, in turn, ignited the progress of modern civilization, directly impacting the quality of life we enjoy today. Descartes defined substances as fundamental entities that possess independent existence and can be conceived of without reliance on anything else. In Descartes' view, two phenomena in our world meet this criteria. One of them, which we are already familiar with, is thinking. Descartes refers to this substance as the res cogitans, meaning thinking thing. With this definition, Descartes is referring to us humans, but only in our mental dimension, that is, our consciousness or our soul. The second substance represents everything that remains when you take away human consciousness, the soul or thinking. This substance encompasses all material entities in the world. A defining attribute of material things is their extension, which can vary in scale but always exists. Descartes referred to this second substance as the res extensa, the extended thing. These are two foundational substances upon which the world is built, according to Descartes: the res cogitans, the thinking thing, and the res extensa, the extended thing. The mind is limited to modes of understanding, will, and, to some extent, sensation, while the body can only have modes of size, shape, motion, and quantity. Bodies cannot have modes of understanding or willing, as these are not expressions of extension, and minds cannot have modes of shape or motion, as these are not forms of thought. Now, the crucial point of Descartes that significantly influenced the cultural and civilizational development of the modern era, perhaps more than any other, is this: both substances, precisely because they are substances, must be entirely different and separate from each other. Only then can they exist independently of each other and be thought of independently. From this absolute separation and distinctiveness, it follows that, apart from humans, there is nothing in nature that possesses a soul, that is, the ability to think and feel. Therefore, everything in nature, except for humans, is considered a mere object, operating mechanically like a machine. If we can consider nature and all that it encompasses as soulless and devoid of sensation, then it becomes acceptable to use and manipulate it without any reservations. This aligns with one of the objectives of Descartes' philosophy, which is to empower us to become masters and possessors of nature. According to Descartes, nature is essentially raw material, free for use and consumption without moral concerns. Descartes' influence marked the commencement of an era characterized by tremendous advancements in the natural sciences and technology. It allowed researchers to investigate and experiment without ethical or religious limitations or taboos. They could extract raw materials and make use of every resource available since they were perceived as mere objects. This demystification of nature ignited the remarkable progress of modern civilization, contributing to the contemporary quality of life we experience today. The medical and technological progress made possible by Descartes' ideas has greatly enhanced the comfort and convenience of our lives. Yet, in our modern understanding, we are also more conscious of the drawbacks that emerged from this development. An important example is our evolving ethical perspective on the treatment of animals. Descartes' understanding of the mind-body dualism regarded animals as mere objects, devoid of consciousness and emotions, which in turn led to the notion that harming an animal was just like damaging an object like a chair. Today, we find this viewpoint rather unacceptable. This shift in perspective extends to the realm of ecology. Descartes' promotion of unrestricted use of nature eventually led to its unbridled exploitation and the depletion of natural resources, ultimately endangering the complete destruction of our environment. Today, we recognize this as an erroneous path. However, it remains debatable whether Descartes can be solely blamed for this misstep. In contrast to many who later adopted this philosophy, Descartes was not entirely oblivious to the welfare of future generations and the concept of sustainability. He states in the Discourse on the Method, "It is likewise true that our cares ought to extend beyond the present, and it is good to omit doing what might perhaps bring some profit to the living, when we have in the view the accomplishment of other ends that will be of much greater advantage to posterity." Queen Christina of Sweden, an enthusiastic reader of his works, invited him to her court, and Descartes accepted the invitation. In September 1649, he traveled to Stockholm. Looking back, he might have been better off not going, as the external conditions of life there had a detrimental impact on his physical well-being. On top of it all, it soon became clear that they did not even like each other. These combined factors led to his passing on February 11, 1650, at the age of 54.